Jennifer Kesse's life looked picture-perfect from the outside, the kind of life that seemed safe and ordinary. At just 24, she had carved out a routine that balanced work, family, and a future she was carefully planning. She worked as a financial analyst, had recently purchased her own condo, and was in a steady relationship. Friends described her as someone dependable, someone who never left people wondering where she was or what she was doing. That was why, on the morning of January 24, 2006, alarm bells rang almost immediately. When Jennifer didn't show up for work, it wasn't brushed off as carelessness. It was the first crack in the calm surface of her life, the first sign that something terribly wrong had happened. Her parents received a call from her employer after she failed to appear at the office. They tried calling her cell phone, but it rang endlessly without an answer. It was unlike her to ignore messages, let alone miss work. Within hours, her parents and brother were at her apartment, desperate for answers. What they found inside only deepened the mystery. Her condo was tidy, nothing out of place. The shower appeared recently used, and her clothes from the night before were neatly set aside. On the counter sat her phone, her keys, her purse, and all the things she would have taken if she planned to leave. The only item missing was her car. The apartment told the story of someone who had started her day just like any other, but never finished even the simplest routine. What made the scene even more unsettling was how ordinary it looked. There was no broken lock, no forced entry, no overturned furniture. If something had happened to Jennifer, it had happened so quietly that no one heard it, and so smoothly that it left no obvious trace. It was as if she had been plucked out of her home by invisible hands. Neighbors recalled nothing unusual that morning, no loud noises or disturbances. The silence around her disappearance was chilling, a kind of silence that suggested planning, precision, and perhaps surveillance. In the days before she vanished, Jennifer had told those close to her that she sometimes felt uneasy living in her condo complex. The property was under heavy construction, and unfamiliar faces moved in and out daily. While most residents came and went without a thought, Jennifer felt as though someone might have been watching her. Still, she never voiced specific concerns to police or management, and nothing concrete ever came from those feelings. They were just fragments of unease, brushed aside as paranoia, until her disappearance gave them new and frightening weight. The first day of searching turned frantic. Flyers were printed, phone calls made, and search parties organized. Friends, family, and co-workers gathered together, unwilling to believe she had simply chosen to walk away from her life. Every hour that passed without word from her deepened the fear that something sinister was behind her absence. The early hours of a missing person case are often the most critical, and Jennifer's family knew that with each passing minute, the chance of bringing her home safely grew slimmer. What none of them could have predicted was that this would not be a case solved in hours or even days. Jennifer's disappearance was only beginning to unravel, and the mystery that surrounded it would stretch into years of questions, theories, and haunting uncertainty. The search quickly turned toward Jennifer's apartment complex, the last confirmed place she had been seen. On the surface, it looked like any other gated community, a mix of young professionals, families, and constant movement. But beneath that exterior was a place in transition. Large sections of the property were undergoing renovation, and dozens of temporary workers were coming and going without much oversight. It created an environment where strangers could blend in easily, unnoticed by residents who were used to seeing new faces every day. For investigators, that was both a clue and a nightmare. It meant anyone could have been watching Jennifer, anyone could have known her habits, and anyone could have had access to the grounds without drawing suspicion. When detectives walked through her building, they noticed something that made them uneasy. Jennifer's condo was on the first floor, with sliding glass doors that opened to a small patio. The doors locked, but construction workers were often seen moving through that area, fixing railings, painting, and hauling supplies. Neighbors later recalled seeing unfamiliar men loitering near stairwells or standing outside units where they didn't appear to belong. Most residents thought little of it at the time. Workers came and went so often that their presence faded into the background. But to investigators piecing together Jennifer's last moments, the setting began to feel less like a coincidence and more like an opportunity. Inside her home, detectives examined every corner. There were no signs of violence or forced entry, which raised unsettling questions. Had Jennifer willingly opened her door to someone she recognized? Or had someone followed her in while she was distracted? It was possible she had been approached as she was leaving for work, perhaps in the parking lot or just outside her front door. The complete lack of disturbance inside suggested that if she was taken, it happened before she ever made it to her car. That thought chilled her family, because it meant she might have been intercepted just steps from the safety of her home. Investigators also dug into reports from other residents. Some mentioned unsettling encounters, workers who stared too long, strangers who asked personal questions, footsteps in hallways at odd hours. Nothing amounted to a crime on its own, but the collection of uneasy experiences painted a picture of an environment where Jennifer could easily have been singled out. The idea that she may have been targeted weeks before her disappearance became a serious possibility. If someone had studied her routine, they would have known she left for work around the same time each morning. They would have known when she was alone, when she was vulnerable, and when they could act without drawing attention. The investigation into the complex revealed another disturbing detail. Many of the labors on site were never properly documented. Background checks were either incomplete or never conducted. Some workers disappeared once Jennifer's case made the news, vanishing as quickly as they had arrived. Police could never be certain if those men had critical information, or if one of them might have been directly involved. The transient nature of the workforce created an endless maze of possibilities that led to dead ends at every turn. For Jennifer's family, it was an agonizing realization. The place she had chosen to live, the home she had bought with such pride, may have been the very environment that placed her in danger. 2 days after Jennifer vanished, a breakthrough seemed to come when her black Chevrolet Malibu was discovered parked at a condominium complex about a mile from her home. To her family, it felt like the first solid clue, something tangible to hold on to in a sea of uncertainty. But instead of providing answers, the discovery raised even more questions. The car was found in a visitor parking space, sitting as if it had been placed there deliberately. The area itself was quiet, not far from a busy road, yet just isolated enough that someone could have parked without drawing attention. Whoever left it there seemed to know the spot would not immediately stand out. When investigators examined the vehicle, they were struck by how clean it was. The seats, the handles, the steering wheel, areas where fingerprints should have been, were wiped smooth. Even the floor mats showed little trace of dirt or debris. It looked less like a car that had been abandoned in a hurry, and more like one that had been carefully staged. Detectives collected fibers and swabbed for DNA, but the results were inconclusive. Nothing inside the car pointed directly to Jennifer or to anyone else. The unsettling impression was that someone had taken deliberate steps to erase their presence, suggesting calculation rather than panic. The most haunting piece of evidence came not from the car itself, but from surveillance cameras mounted at the condo complex where it was found. Investigators reviewed hours of grainy footage, and then they saw it, a figure calmly walking away from Jennifer's car shortly after it had been parked. The person's stride was casual, unhurried, as if leaving the scene of a crime without fear of being caught. Yet the footage was almost cruel in what it revealed. Each frame of the video captured the suspect just as their face was blocked, first by a fence post, then by another obstruction, and finally by a shadow. By chance or by design, the camera never caught a clear glimpse of the person's identity. What should have been a breakthrough instead became one of the most infamous frustrations in the case. Detectives studied the suspect's appearance closely. The height, the build, the way they carried themselves, it suggested an adult, possibly male, but beyond that, certainty faded. Family members clung to the footage, replaying it endlessly, hoping for some detail others had missed. But the figure remained a ghostly presence, a reminder of how close investigators had come to solving the mystery, and how far away they still were. The video became a symbol of the entire case, evidence that promised clarity, but delivered only more confusion. The location of the car itself added to the strangeness. The complex where it was left was not random. It was along a route Jennifer might have traveled, yet it was also surrounded by busy streets and open spaces. Leaving the car there seemed risky, unless the person knew the area well enough to believe it would go unnoticed for a time. That choice hinted at someone familiar with Orlando, someone who understood the layout of neighborhoods and the blind spots of surveillance. To Jennifer's family, the discovery of her car should have been a moment of hope, a sign they were closer to finding her. Instead, it marked the beginning of even deeper fears. The vehicle sat as a silent witness, holding secrets that refused to be uncovered, and leaving behind only the ghostly image of a faceless figure slipping into the distance. As investigators pressed forward, the story of Jennifer's disappearance grew even darker. What began as a missing person case was now unfolding into a haunting mystery filled with unsettling details and shadows that refused to come into focus. Detectives started piecing together fragments of Jennifer's lost days, combing through her conversations, her habits, and her movements. One detail struck them immediately. Jennifer had mentioned to friends and family that she sometimes felt watched in the weeks before she vanished. It wasn't just a fleeting comment. It was a lingering unease she carried when returning to her condo or walking through the parking lot. At the time, no one imagined those feelings could be a prelude to something far more sinister. In hindsight, they became chilling red flags. Police looked deeper into the construction project at Jennifer's complex. The sheer number of workers moving in and out daily created a web of uncertainty. Some residents had noticed laborers staring for too long or making inappropriate remarks, but these incidents had gone largely unreported. Jennifer herself had shared that she disliked walking past certain groups of workers, but she never described any specific threats. When detectives began to investigate, they learned that many of these individuals were temporary hires with little to no background information. Some vanished from the work site soon after Jennifer went missing, disappearing before police could question them. This created a maze of leads, dozens of names and faces, most untraceable, each one a potential suspect and yet none leaving behind concrete evidence. At the same time, Jennifer's digital footprint was scrutinized. Investigators combed through her phone records, emails, and social media, searching for signs of unusual communication or secret plans. Nothing indicated that she had chosen to leave voluntarily. She was stable in her job, happy in her relationship, and in close contact with her family. The absence of anything suspicious only amplified the fear that she had been taken against her will. It also reinforced the idea that whoever was responsible knew how to move in silence, without leaving a trail. The security footage of the faceless figure abandoning her car continued to haunt the investigation. Detectives released it to the public, hoping someone might recognize the suspect's walk or build. Thousands of tips poured in, but none led to a breakthrough. Every promising lead fizzled into frustration. The footage remained a cruel puzzle piece, tantalizingly close to the truth but forever incomplete. For Jennifer's family, the thought that the answers could be hidden in those blurred frames was both unbearable and impossible to ignore. As weeks turned into months, investigators began to confront a grim possibility. Jennifer's disappearance might not have been random at all. The theory emerged that someone had been studying her, learning her routine, and waiting for the right moment. The eerie feeling she had of being watched may not have been her imagination. It might have been the chilling awareness of a predator lurking nearby. Whether it was someone connected to the construction site or another individual altogether, the unsettling clues pointed toward a carefully planned abduction. The ordinary condo complex that once represented Jennifer's independence now stood as a symbol of danger, a place where she may have unknowingly walked into the trap of someone who had already chosen her as their victim. Years slipped by, but Jennifer's case never moved beyond the shadow of uncertainty. Every anniversary of her disappearance brought renewed hope that the truth would surface, yet the silence around her fate grew heavier with time. For her family, life became a cycle of searching, waiting, and heartbreak. They organized vigils, launched awareness campaigns, and begged the public for information, refusing to let Jennifer's name fade into the background. The image of her smiling face appeared on flyers, billboards, and television screens, but no call ever came that offered closure. It was as though she had been swallowed by the city itself, erased without a trace, leaving only haunting questions that no one could answer. Investigators continued their work, but the trail was cold. Detectives revisited old leads, re-interviewed witnesses, and tried to reconstruct the events of that January morning. Each effort felt like chasing shadows. The faceless figure in the surveillance footage remained the most tangible clue, and yet it yielded nothing. Experts studied the video frame by frame, analyzing the suspect's gait and body type, but every theory was speculative. Technology advanced over the years, giving hope that new tools might finally expose the truth, but the video never gave up its secret. The figure remained a phantom, a silent reminder of how close the case had come to resolution only to be swallowed in uncertainty. Meanwhile, rumors and theories multiplied. Some believed Jennifer had been the victim of a random crime of opportunity, taken by a stranger who noticed her at the wrong time. Others were convinced it had been someone from her own surroundings, perhaps connected to the construction workers at her complex. A smaller group speculated that Jennifer had stumbled into something she wasn't meant to see, an accidental witness to a dangerous act that sealed her fate. Each theory carried weight, yet none could be proven. Every possibility remained open, and every unanswered question carved deeper into the mystery. For her family, the absence of answers was worse than any truth could have been. Without evidence of what happened, they could not grieve fully, nor could they move forward. They lived in a suspended state, caught between hope and despair, clinging to the possibility that Jennifer might still be alive somewhere, while also fearing the reality that she was gone. Each passing year made the silence more suffocating. What once felt like an urgent investigation turned into a decades-long search for justice, with fewer resources and fading attention. Yet Jennifer's story never fully disappeared. It lingered in news segments, true crime discussions, and the collective memory of those who followed the case. Her disappearance became one of Florida's most unsettling mysteries, a case that symbolized the terrifying reality of how someone could vanish from an ordinary life without warning, without explanation, and without leaving a single clear clue behind. The unanswered questions, the faceless figure, and the eerie quiet that followed her last known moments formed a puzzle that remained unsolved. Jennifer's name became more than just a reminder of loss. It became a haunting testament to the fragility of safety and the chilling possibility that some mysteries will remain forever beyond reach.